mayor's office. The mayor's office put Ryan in contact with me. Ryan had observed this social media post, which he'll explain in a moment, and called the mayor's office, said, we want to help. And that led to a phone call to me. And we are very gracious that there's people like Ryan and Walmart that want to give back to our community and help the police department and the officers do what they do and be better at what they do. Ryan, would you like to explain further?
Yeah. Thank you, Ty. Mayor, Commissioner, members of the commission, thank you for having me here this morning. I just wanted to first start on behalf of the Walmart Foundation. I wanted to thank all of the men and women here in the room and those that serve, and also the men and women of the social services department that serve so many here in the community. Also want to thank Ty, Officers Graves, Officer McCollum. Thank you for working with us on this grant. Morgan Saeed from the mayor's office put us in touch with Ty, and Ty called me back within 30 minutes, and we got to work on this grant. The funding of this grant became from this social media post. As you can see, Officers Littlejohn and Hiltner responded to a call where a grandmother was home with her 4 kids, and they were hungry. The officers took it upon themselves to go out, get McDonald's for the children, and then went about their day. The next morning, the grandmother called back and said, we don't have any food. So the officers worked with social services and got them groceries. And this post started going viral, and I just happened to see it on one of my feeds, and I thought, how can Walmart use our size and scales and our resources to help these officers, the social services, and the community? So that's why I called Morgan at the mayor's office and said, how can we help? And he put me in touch with Ty. So today we are here to announce a $15,000 grant to the Police Officers Foundation, or Kansas City's foundation or association, to help with efforts just like this, to ensure when an officer responds to a call or social services responds to a call, and there's somebody in dire need of food or clothing, that they will have the resources to do so without having to come out of pocket. So on behalf of that, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Ty.
Could you all take a picture with us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
This isn't going to be on the campaign poster or something.
Thank you so much.
Where did it stop? Somebody asked me if that's for me.
All right.
That's just what I was thinking. Regular every month we do.
Hey, Ryan,
Better write his number
the
down.
mayor and I were talking to see how we can renew that annually.
And
We will.
Mr. Chairman, if I may say, Walmart has been a very good partner of the city in a number of different ways. Mayor's Christmas Tree Fund and other efforts. I want to say thank you to Ty Grant here, because we get a lot of calls in the mayor's office. Sometimes folks don't follow up that quickly, and that means a lot. And so I hope as our officers have any needs, or if they're going out of pocket for something, they feel comfortable either calling the chief's office or anything like that. We'll put them in touch, and we know our friends at Walmart will be there. But we'll be sure to ask before we start spending all your money. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you
gentlemen.
again. Awesome. Great way to start a meeting.
Yes.
Audit report, FY 2023 first quarter.
Good morning, Board President Tolbert, members of the Board of Police Commissioners, Doug Jones, City Auditor's Office. I'm here to present our audit of police department spending from the Community Policing and Prevention Fund for the first quarter of fiscal year 2023. I will discuss the audit objective, provide some background, and summarize our findings. Copies of the audit report, highlights page, and the presentation slides are in tab A of your board book. The team for this audit was Jonathan LeCure and Vivian Z. On March 22nd of 2022, or March 2022, the City Council passed Ordinance 220216, creating the Community Policing and Prevention Fund. The ordinance also directed the city auditor to schedule and conduct quarterly audits of the Board of Police Commissioners' efforts to meet the city's expectations outlined in the ordinance and report to the council as soon as practical after the end of each fiscal quarter. I presented this to the council on, I believe, on the 3rd or maybe that was the 5th of November. Our audit focuses on whether the police department spent the CPP fund as expected by the city council during the quarter. To answer our objective, we assessed the method the police department developed for reporting CPP fund spending, summarized all reporting categories, and evaluated the accuracy and eligibility of expenditures allocated to school resource officers and community action network CPP fund categories. We conducted the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, with the exception of reporting the views of management concerning this audit, because we did not issue any recommendations in this report. Ordinance 220216 establishes the city's expectations regarding the police department's expenditure of $33.36 million in these 12 categories during fiscal year 2023. The police department reported spending about a third of the funds appropriated to the CPP fund and allocated these expenditures to eligible spending categories. A summary of spending allocated to each category is shown in Exhibit 1 on pages 2 and 3 of the report. The police department's fiscal division developed a process that if operated as intended will accurately report to the city the department's quarterly use of the CPP fund. The process carries some risk because it is a manual process. Additionally, it is labor intensive and time consuming for department staff. About $2.6 million of the CPP fund was appropriated to the Special Operations Division and Traffic Division category. The police department reported spending the full appropriation and using the department's general fund to cover remaining operations in the category for the first quarter. Police staff stated they will continue to use general fund dollars appropriated to the department or additional funding within the CPP fund to fund the special operations and traffic divisions during the remaining quarters. For the first quarter, we verified whether officers were assigned as school resource officers in Kansas City Public Schools and East Patrol and Metro Patrol Community Action Network officers as reported. Establishing Community Action Network centers in the East and Metro Patrols was a city expectation. The department reported allocating the expenses of for two officers to the Metro Patrol CAN for all 7 pay periods in the first quarter, and 2 officers in the East Patrol CAN Center for the last 2 pay periods of the quarter. Another expectation was dedicated school resource officers for public schools in Kansas City. The department allocated the expenses of 5 officers for 6 of 7 pay periods and 4 officers for the last pay period of the quarter. A breakdown of how the police department allocated expenses to each community policing and prevention fund category for the first quarter starts on page 5 of the report. We plan to verify the expenses for some of these categories in future quarterly reports. We did not request a response from the department because we did not make any recommendations. I do want to thank management and staff in the police department and the city's finance department for their cooperation and input throughout this audit. This concludes my brief presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have, as well as staff can answer any questions.
Any questions? So Doug, your report finds us spending it as we said we would.
As the council expected it, yes, that's what we saw in the first quarter, was the funds were allocated to the funds as anticipated.
And the reason I bring that up is because when we were into the budget for that particular year, we said to the council and to the mayor, you know, we all want the same thing. And so I think this report is indicative of that this is what the council requested. It is not out of line with what the commission wants. And when we negotiate those things up front and have an agreement on it, it's smooth sailing. So thank you for your report.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Commissioner Tolbert, I'd like to add, if I may, that Captain Heinen, Manager Ryder, and Assistant Supervisor Melissa McLaughlin put a lot of hours into doing this. This was no easy task, 120 hours to be exact, and that's in addition to their daily work. So they work closely with the city. I think we learned some things, make the next quarter run smoothly, but I just wanted to mention them specifically. They did an outstanding job, put a lot of hours into getting it done.
Yeah, I heard him say that they were manually done. So is there any way to possibly bring that into some kind of a format where it could be tracked?
With the current
Computer.
technology and the system that we have, I mean, this is not the only way that we can do it right now. We'll certainly look at ways to streamline the process and make it easier. But because of the way the funds are coming out of different categories and assignments of where people are, it makes it a little cumbersome.
Please tell them we appreciate it. We want them to cooperate with the city, and it's nice to hear that we did.
All right. Thank you. Will do.
Investigation Bureau, Acting Deputy Chief Keith Kirchhoff.
Good morning, Commissioners. My information is under tab B in your books. You should also have a copy of the daily homicide analysis report in front of you. If you refer to that, you will see that there have been 147 homicides in 2022 compared with 135 last year, which is up 12 from the previous year. I must say that it's been 2 weeks. We've not had a murder this month as well. The 5-year average of homicides year to date is 136. We're currently 11 homicides up compared to the 5-year average. We have cleared 59 homicides in the current year. We have also additionally cleared 14 homicides which occurred in the previous years for a total of 73 cleared cases. And now, Commissioners, you also should have a copy of the non-fatal shooting comparison report in front of you. You will note from January 1 to date, there were 482 non-fatal shooting victims in Kansas City. In 2021, we had 453 during the same time, so that's a 6% increase. In October 22, we had 54 non-fatal shooting victims compared to 51 in October the previous year, also a 6% increase. Please direct your attention to the non-fatal shooting report listed under tab B, page 2. You will see on your report that of the 54 non-fatal shooting victims in October, 32 were cooperative. That is 59% of the victims were cooperating with the police department at the time the offense was reported. Black males accounted for the highest number of non-fatal shooting victims with 30, which is 56% of the total victims. White males, there were 13 white male victims, which is 24%. Black females were third with 8 victims, which is 14%. The remaining 3 victims, which is 6%, were white females. We have identified 5 suspects at the time of this report. 3 suspects were black males, 1 was a white male, and 1 was an Asian male. On page 5, you will see the recovered firearms report. The department recovered 193 firearms in October 2022 compared to 228 last year. The 5-year average for the month of October is 209. Totally this year, we have recovered 2,199 firearms. On the next few pages, you will find the monthly case submissions and disposition reports. KCPD submitted a total of 225 cases to county prosecutors' offices during the month of October. 200 of these were to Jackson County, 19 to Clay, 6 to Platte. Charges were filed in 168 cases during the month. 59 cases were charged in custody, and 109 warrants were issued. 5 cases were returned for additional work. 82 cases were declined. It should be noted that these numbers include cases that were submitted during previous months but returned in October. I'd like to now direct your attention to page 9.
Let me ask you before you go there, what happens to those 2,199 firearms? Are they destroyed, crushed, melted? What happens to them?
We have to receive a notification from a court, but yes, but they are eventually destroyed, all destroyed.
Unless they were stolen and then they're returned to the registered owner that reported them stolen.
Correct. There is a process in place for people to retrieve their firearms. And then if that process is exhausted, then in time they are destroyed.
But it's important for people to report when guns have been stolen so that we know they're stolen guns. And if we get them later, we can get them back to them.
Correct. And of course, any gun that's used or thought to be used in a crime is held for evidence as well. We're talking about guns that are not spoken for, not evidence, not stolen, etc. Okay, so page 9, the bottom of page 9, on the property crimes division, as we transition from reporting numbers from each patrol division to offense specific. So basically, when we reorganized the property crimes division, we were reporting property crimes numbers per division specific, like center, metro, east, north, south. So we have, like the top of page 9, like violent crimes, we have moved to reporting the offenses, reporting the numbers based on offenses. You'll see auto crimes, burglary, stealing. So I was looking at the numbers, and they are a lot low this year. And I just wanted to point that out, that is due to a glitch in our system of reporting. We went from reporting from division to offense. So we're working through that. We will have the numbers more accurate for you next month. But I just wanted to note proactively that those numbers are low. We realize that they're low and that we're working through to get the system corrected so that they're reported correctly. Missing persons cases, if you'll note in your the notable events under missing persons, you'll see there have been 25 missing persons reported so far in October. There's still 22 have been located, and there's still 3 that are being worked on. But I just wanted to stress, like we did last month, that we encourage the public to speak up and to report to law enforcement if or when a friend or relative or loved one turns up missing. There's no time frame. We just want the public to be able to come forward to us, make a report, and then we will start an investigation on those missing persons reports.
Where are you? What page are we
Oh,
on?
just
21.
sorry, it's page 20 is what I have. I apologize. There's just a little note there about our current status of missing persons cases under sex crimes and missing persons.
Okay, yeah.
And like I said, I just want to stress the public to encourage to continue to call us to make a report.
And can any person, so let's say theoretically there's a community member, a pastor or something of that sort that hears people are missing in a given neighborhood of the city, they're able to make a missing persons report even if they're not kin to the persons who are suspected to be missing?
Yes, that's my understanding. Absolutely. Okay, lastly,
And if I may interrupt,
sure.
in the past, we've seen allegations or, rumored people missing, and people have come forth with that information. We always reach back out to the person and try to garner more information. In recent months, there's been several times where there have been, rumored people missing, no names. We have to have a name or somewhere to start with. We can't just say, we've heard that there's missing people from this area. It's a partnership. It's a collaboration. We have to work together. So if we get some information, we take that seriously and we triage information. We search our databases. We assign detectives when appropriate. And so it's like I say, I just want to say it's a partnership, but it has to start with providing a name of a person who's allegedly missing.
You need a name, or can it be a description and the place from which they were used to be and are gone?
I mean, we'll take that, but it's not a lot to go on. I mean, it's not a lot of. Yep. I mean, even in those circumstances, we might dispatch extra patrols to the area to look around, but it's not a lot we can do. We really need a name as a starting point.
What do we do in the situation where we don't have one? I mean, so I used to live at 19 in Paseo, and up the street, there was a gentleman who panhandled for years and one day just disappeared. Now, not suspecting anything went awry necessarily, but if there is some suspicion that a member of the public has, what might be your recommendation?
Again, I would say report it and we'll see what we can do. We can do some more digging. We can see if there's other people who might have information with regard to their whereabouts. But I mean, to be honest, there's not a lot we can do. Just, I mean, people can move, people can not want to be found, but we can start checking if we have a starting point, a name, a contact person, anything of that nature. We just have to have a path to go.
Thank you.
And to add to that, Mayor and Chief, I can never understate the importance of an area canvas. And if we have something to start with, like to your example, then we can have people go out and do what we call as an area canvas and just poll the neighborhood and see what they know. And it's, I can't stress the importance of, that's how we do our business, and we find out a lot of information from our community. Okay, one last thing that I want to point out. We had a new detective school November 2nd to November 9th, just within the last couple of weeks. We hadn't had one since 2018, so it's a pretty big deal for the Bureau because of the pandemic and various things, entered in. So we usually over the past have had them every other year, but we were able to have one, like I said, the last couple of weeks. We had 82 attendees, which included current KCPD detectives and those detectives that might possibly transfer to, to become a detective someday. We also had 6 outside agencies, Kansas City, Kansas, Miami County, the Missouri State Highway Patrol, Jackson, Clay, and Platte County also sent people. We had 33 total presenters that covered 29 subjects, and the attendees received 46 Missouri Post credit hours, which is a big deal because it's free. And it gets our members to have good training through Post. Topics included a range of topics: crime scene management, crime lab capabilities, various legal issues, interviewing, report writing, crime analyst resources. All the whole gambit of investigations. I would like to publicly thank Captain Everett Babcock, Sergeant Mark Slater, who were. They headed they administered the course. They put the course together. They put hours of their time and talents into this school. And also thanks to all the presenters. Like I said, we had 33 total presenters that from all the range that took their time out, to prepare a class and to teach a class. So we certainly appreciate that. Also, we had 82 attendees. As you can see, we had a packed room, and also to all of those attendees, all their supervisors for letting them come and spend time with us. I want to thank them. Pictured is Floyd Bledsoe. He's the gentleman there in the blue shirt from the Midwest Innocence Project. He was exonerated by DNA testing after serving 16 years in the Kansas Department of Corrections for a crime he did not commit. He came and spoke to the class. That's a picture of the class there. You have another picture? And the next picture is Dr. Melissa Petkovacic. And I apologize if I butchered her name, but that's about as good as it's going to get. She's a professor at the University of Central Missouri, and she taught a class on human memory. So like I said, I just wanted to share a couple of pictures with you and let you know that class did take place. And that will conclude my report, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Patrol Bureau Acting Chief Stacy Graves.
Good morning,
Deputy
Commissioners,
Chief
Mr.
Officer.
Mayor. I have a brief presentation for you. In October of 2022, the 911 call center, which includes police, fire, EMS, 911 hang-up calls, et cetera, received 87,444 calls. Officers were dispatched to 20,459 calls for service, which means 764 uniformed patrol officers answered 20,459 emergency calls for service in person in the month of October. Non-sworn personnel and other agencies assisted in the redirection and handling of the remaining 35,000 calls. And median response times, I just kind of want to go over this. Sometimes we have questions on what is priority 10 or priority 1, priority 20. Priority 1 calls. This priority is for calls that present extreme danger, known danger, or potential danger to human life, which would be shootings, armed robberies, rapes. Priority 2, this priority is for calls where the potential for danger or injuries to occur exists but has not yet happened, which is disturbances, domestic violence, bomb threats. Our response to priority 1 calls are up, as you can see, a bit, just a little over 8 minutes. The ideal time to respond to priority 1 calls is 7.55 minutes or less. The Patrol Bureau is currently reviewing our law enforcement personnel and how they're deployed, taking into consideration staffing shortages, creating potential officer safety concerns, response times, and overtime expenditures. Effective December 4th, most of our uniformed proactive patrol officers will be redeployed back into sectors to assist in the staffing shortages of those assigned to respond to 911 calls for services and emergencies. So we want to make sure that we have officers available when we get those emergency calls. Traffic crashes and fatalities.
Let me ask a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So on the slide here and in our book, it says priority 10.
It's priority 10.
But
We
you
call it priority 1.
Okay,
Yes.
and then 20 is 2.
2. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Traffic crashes, we are just a little bit down, but we are up in fatalities from 71 to 76 in 2022. A couple stats on fatalities. Over 70% of those killed in fatality accidents are white and are males. Just less than half of the drivers are the drivers involved in the accidents, and over 50% were not wearing their seatbelt. 40% of those involved were driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And then we have a high crash locations. You can see in Metro, Gregory and US 71 is the highest crash location. If you see that, it's kind of got lines through it, but that FTYROW, just if there's lots of acronyms in government work, that is a failure to yield right of way. I know I've got traffic guys in here that might correct that.
Are these numbers the number of crashes or the number of tickets? Or
Those are the
of-
number of tickets, but those are our high crash locations from 1 to 10. So those are the locations that we've experienced most of our crashes ranked. And the leading cause, like for Gregory and 71 Highway, is rear end red light lane usage. And for those of you who travel 71 Highway, especially if you're going north, right there, they have a light and you kind of coming around a curve. It's kind of dangerous if traffic's backed up, which usually happens during rush hour times. And then I would be remiss if I don't mention our street races and sideshows that we have going on. We have had several dangerous incidents involving street racers and sideshow participants over the past months. These dangerous activities have led to fatal accidents involving drivers, participants, and innocent bystanders in our city. This past Sunday night, up to 90 vehicles and sideshow participants blocked roadways in our city, creating a hazardous situation for spectators and other motorists. The crowd discharged firearms during their stunts, creating an even more unsafe atmosphere. Officers from Central Patrol, Metro Patrol, East Patrol, Traffic, our helicopter, and our tactical response teams responded for enforcement. Officers wrote over 30 tickets, mostly for street racing and spectator violations, deployed stop sticks to deflate tires of fleeing vehicles, towed abandoned and disabled vehicles. Officers observed a hit and run crash. We recovered a handgun, and we recovered over 100 spent shell casings. KCPD will continue to provide enforcement efforts in an attempt to dissuade the unsafe activities associated with street racing and sideshows. This Thursday, patrol commanders, we already had a pre-scheduled meeting, will be meeting to review current ordinances and make recommendations and plans for future prevention and enforcement efforts. I just want everyone to know too, this is a nationwide problem. I saw an article over the weekend involving San Jose, California, where hundreds of cars were involved in sideshow activities. They brought together 100 officers from their region, and their helicopter assisted in enforcement action. In San Jose, there were 500 cars stopped, 720 citations issued, 19 cars towed. Numerous cars were abandoned. 2 of them were stolen. A ghost gun was recovered, and a victim reported being carjacked at the location of the sideshow activities. So due to the recent increased activity here in Kansas City, our media unit put together a quick PSA with a message from our traffic enforcement unit.
I'm Sergeant Mike Ward of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. There's a dangerous activity on the rise that we're urging you to avoid.
Well, the Kansas City Metro has been woken up many times because of late night car tires screeching on the roads. Oftentimes, it's a sideshow.
Sideshows, where drivers perform reckless and harmful burnouts on public streets. Put everyone at risk, including the driver, passengers, and spectators. People attending these sideshows have died in Kansas City, some recently. KCPD is actively enforcing the law against these sideshows. Since June of 2020, we have issued almost 70 citations for sideshows and more than 120 citations to the spectators. Punishments for taking part in sideshows could include jail time. Please talk to your friends and loved ones about avoiding these events. We want you to be safe.
As part of the ordinances you're considering or hoping the city will consider, will they include vehicle forfeitures for participants?
Yes, right now we have an ordinance, but it requires a search warrant to actually seize the vehicle. We've also had ordinances in the past, over the past couple of years, like careless and imprudent driving, where before it was a bondable offense and now it's not. So like this past weekend, we issued tickets. And that's a lot of the part of the enforcement that we do. But like I said, we do have a pre-scheduled meeting this Thursday that we're meeting with patrol commanders. We're going to be discussing recommendations to possibly amend some of the ordinances that we have and just try to figure out exactly what we can do to help the situation.
Are the tickets being enforced by the prosecutors at the city?
So we're going to have those conversations. That's part of what we're talking about internally, to make sure that those who are written these tickets, that they receive the punishment that fits that ticket, like the maximum. So some might say, oh, we can give you like this much of a fine or whatever. We are going to ask that they impose the highest.
Then I suggest you meet with the city prosecutors and whoever over there when you're looking at that. Maybe call it something so it's easy for them when they see a ticket. It's not just like any other careless and imprudent driving or defective equipment or whatever they're called. I haven't done municipal court in maybe 30 years, but if you could work with them, I think that would help, because I know that there are people in the city council that want this to stop.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a great working relationship with Linda Miller, who used to be my boss. And so I'll text her, but maybe we can set up a training with our people. But she has great communication with the Patrol Bureau as well. Thank you.
I have a quick question. How are they notifying all the spectators? I mean, are they putting it out on social media? Can we be
Yes.
proactive and maybe kind of scanning that and getting people out ahead of it, or?
Yes, we do. And that's how we're either alerted by calls for service, or we get information that there's going to be a gathering. And the group obviously is so mobile. This past weekend, we had them in an area of like 59th and Lister, somewhat of an industrial area. After they dispersed, probably about an hour later, they showed up at Berkeley Park. So we use those enforcement efforts in both of those places. And part of the concern over the weekend was we already had tactical response teams in and around the T-Mobile Center because there was a concert. There was a large event that was letting out. And we didn't want any of that unsafe activity going on when we have a lot of pedestrians that will be out on the street leaving after the show.
I want to just, first of all, commend you. This has been a huge concern for some time. It is not unique to Kansas City, but at the same time, we want to make sure we root out this activity I appreciate the mayor's mention as well of the secondary effect criminal activity we often see next to these sideshows. So not just the risk of vehicles out of control and injury to spectators. We've seen shooting activity nearby. I recall, I think on Southwest Boulevard, some sort of car-related parade. I believe there was a homicide. This was maybe a year or more ago. And so your enforcement is greatly appreciated. To Commissioner Kramer's point, yeah, people just put this on social media. They make it somewhat consistent and obvious that they're doing it. I learned about one of these pages that does it, and they actually messaged back at me like, "Oh, Mayor Q, come to our show." Just because that I don't think they think that anybody will do anything, and so I'm very thankful that we've come up with, I think, a fairly creative approach to addressing it. I want to commend, I saw a video recently on, first of all, you all sent it to me, but then it was on television. We had an officer who I think interrupted a situation on the south side of Grand and Truman. And he ended up completely alone in a crowd that I think was quite unruly, a suspect who fought him. Somehow he was able to detain the suspect ultimately, but this is not just kind of, I think some people think this is like the movie Grease and they're just kids racing down the street, which itself was dangerous actually. But this adds a lot more. And so I appreciate the focus on this.
Absolutely. If you have any more questions on that, I'll bring up our social services. Led by Supervisor Tamara McIntosh.
Good morning.
Morning.
So social services has done a couple things here recently. We attended 2 trainings that were out of state. The first one was the North American Human Trafficking Conference, September 28th through the 30th in Las Vegas. This was about informing, engaging, and empowering the public safety professionals, collaborative training modules, and victims with proven investigation. Here's some pictures that we took while we were there. A lady had written a book about red flags and how we don't really, when we think of human trafficking, we think of someone that's probably on drugs and, you know, they're out of their mind. And sometimes it could just be a simple lady walking on the street, looks fine, dressed fine, but she's actually being trafficked. Human trafficking and how it relates to social services. Part of it was looking on the dark web, how the victims are vulnerable. Social media is a big part of it, money, exploitation, and the question of why victims don't just leave or ask for help. With social services, part of how we can assist with human trafficking is to meet with the victims, offer services to fit the need, understand what the barriers are, establish a victim advocate relationship, understand what those red flags are, and the biggest thing is building trust. While we were there, we were able to attend one of the undercover things that they put together at the casinos. And so we were with Vice, and we were able to see how through social media that the perpetrators actually get the, I won't say prostitutes, but get the women to come meet with them, and how they like schmooze them. And so we were able to see that, and the officers were able to bring them back. They had a victim advocate that would talk to the victim and try to offer services and understand what's going on, what the barriers are, and actually they would give tickets to some of the perpetrators, and some they would have to just let go. But it was a really interesting thing to see how that this was happening in these casinos and nobody even knows it. Like you really can't tell unless you're actually looking for it. Here's a picture of us at the conference. And this was led by Dan Nash and Allison. And here recently, November 1st through the 3rd, we went to the National Association of Public Safety for Social Workers. The discussions were how social services can assist with mass violence and terrorism with the planning, response, recovery, enhancing micro-level police social work by practicing effective macro-level work, establishing a community connection, prevention before apprehension, and then what the best practices are between the both fields, between law enforcement and social services. Here's a picture with us with, these are the social service ladies with the Bloomington, Indianapolis Police Department. And their take was one person, one intervention, and one solution at a time. She thought that was really good. So KCPD Social Services from January until currently, total referrals of 680, 142 involved CIT, and 624 women and men needed order of protections. The biggest thing that we've had so far between January and now is the need for food and the need for bedding or crib. And we do partner with Children's Mercy Hospital for to get packing place for babies and sleepyheads to get beds for children and adults. Then we have our violent crime that we assist with at 143. And so holiday events, social services will be participating on December 1st. South Patrol has the Cram the Cruiser. On the 16th, we have the Polar Express movie, and we have the pictures below of how the commanders and officers out of South Patrol dressed up last year as the characters from the Polar Express. December 17th, East Patrol will have their ham and turkey giveaway. CPD is adopting a family, and North and Shoal Creek will be adopting a family. Then we have Sergeant Cranston over here. That was the conductor from the Polar Express. And that is it. Any questions?
Was the training helpful?
Yes. The human trafficking, I know that we have some here, but we're not really involved, and we're trying to figure out how we can kind of put that together to work with the community partners like Veronica's Voice, and to see how we can assist in that if we come across them, to be the first point of contact to get them connected to them in an emergency situation. And then the social service training in Indiana was very helpful. There's a social worker, they do a whole lot more than I think. I don't know if we really want to do all that, but someone was like, I don't know if I want to be like the second in a SWAT. I don't know about that. But they had a lot of good ideas and events and things to do, and how to get more involved in and to assist with police wellness, to also utilize us as a means to someone to talk to.
We appreciate your work very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a couple of questions, if you don't mind. What are your hours at work? I mean, how do you guys have your work days set up between you and so forth?
So we all work different. Like I work mornings, and some of us might work PMs. We haven't really done dog watch, but like I may come in at 6:30 to 2:30. Someone else may come in to 10 to 6. But we try to have it to where there's somebody available, and we also have on call. So now we're 24 hours to where, each person every week switches off to be on call.
So you're on
I
call
have access.
24 hours a day?
Pretty much they have access to us 24 hours.
And so the other question is, what's your workload? How busy are you guys? Are you extraordinarily busy or very busy, or?
It depends on where you're at. So mainly we might average about maybe 15 to 20 referrals a week. Sometimes it depends on, if you're in East Patrol, you might have more than that. But mostly, like for South Patrol, we might get like 25 a month. But it just, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. It just depends on what's going on.
So East Patrol is where you have most of them?
East Patrol is big on referrals.
And sometimes that depends on the referral too, because sometimes you'll work with a family for an entire week
Right.
Or you
Or,
might
or
just,
longer.
or longer,
Yeah.
or you'll work them for just like a couple days or get them connected to services right away and then the need is filled. But sometimes,
Well, where I'm going or what I was leading up to is it seems like we having a real hard time hiring enough police officers. I presume there's availability of social service workers in the
Yes.
community that we could potentially hire.
Yes, we have
And
two.
that it
two
might be
officers.
helpful to have a little bit larger social services staff.
Totally agree. We have two open spots now that waiting for candidates to go through the process for North Patrol and Shoal Creek. But yes, 2, 3 to have
You have
someone every
vacancies,
watch.
but,
Yes,
but I mean, so you need to hire those people and
Right.
you think they're available.
yes.
But I was just wondering if we ought to increase the size of the social services group.
I think we should.
Was that a motion?
Yeah. Totally agree.
Well, we should talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for what
thank
you
you.
do.
That concludes Patrol Bureau.
Easy to do that. That is hire cops.
Administration Bureau Deputy Chief Mike Hicks, and I understand you're retiring.
I am.
Thank you for the years you have served, and hopefully you will kick back and enjoy some retirement time.
I'll try.
This
I
will-
can give
It'll be hard to
lessons.
slow down. You can, great. I might have to take them because it's hard to slow down. You'll find our personnel report under tab D in David. So as of October 31st of 2022, KCPD has 1,671 employees. This is an increase from last month of 13 employees. This increase is attributable to the beginning of the 176th Academy class, minus the resignations and retirements from October. KCPD has a sworn force of 1,119 law enforcement members, with 42 recruits currently in training at the academy. The 175th class graduates on Friday, and those recruits will count towards sworn. KCPD has a non-sworn force of 510 employees. We are continuing to recruit for the January 22nd, 2023 Academy class, and we are beginning preparations for another class to happen later in 2023. The January 22nd class is the 177th Academy class. KCPD has seen a drop in attrition for 2022. Currently, KCPD is losing 14.9 employees per month on average. This compares to last year of almost 20 employees a month. KCPD has lost 149 employees so far in 2021, and this compares to all of 2022, we lost 236 employees. KCPD has added 129 employees in 10 months. In all of 2021, KCPD only added 94 employees. Retirements and resignations have slowed in 2022. Forecasting for November and December of this year, HR reports 2 resignations and 18 retirements. This rate is below the 14.9 loss rate that we currently have for 2022 and well below the 2021 rate of almost 20 per month. So we're seeing the tide is slowly turning and that KCPD is slowly being able to retain the employees that we have, slow the resignations, and hire. And this is a great sign. I'm hopeful that the class in January will be as large, if not larger, than the 176th, but we'll see. And we have another academy class to go. And that concludes my
And we're
report.
still pretty shorthanded, right? I mean, we're still
Yes,
very
sir.
shorthanded, yeah.
Yes, and that's why the Patrol Bureau and the rest of the command staff have been working diligently to figure out how to manage the calls for service and the needs of our city with the law enforcement members we have. But that ship is slowly turning. We're getting there.
Deputy Chief, I wish you well. You're to be commended. Your time as a deputy chief has been an interesting one for all of us. You never blamed anybody. You never cast any doubt on others, you always worked to make sure we were recruiting and addressing the issues that this city and the department needed. So I thank you for that, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
All right. Executive Services Bureau, Acting Deputy Chief Derek McCullum.
Morning, Commissioners and Mr. Mayor. All items for the Executive Services Bureau are located under tab E of your board book. Item A, budget transfers for fiscal year 2022-23. I request general fund, police drug enforcement fund, and police grant fund transfers. The general fund transfer moves $675,000 within personal services, $758,900 within contractual services, and $4,200 within commodities. The general fund transfers will provide appropriations for detention salaries, legal fees, veterinarian services, and food for canines. The police drug enforcement fund transfer moves $90,000 from personal services to commodities. The police grants fund moves $10,509 from personal services, $8,219 from commodities, and $10,000 from capital outlay to contractual services. The police drug enforcement fund and police grants fund transfers adjust appropriations to where they are needed now compared to when they were estimated in the fall of 2021 as the budget was being put together. If you don't have any questions, I recommend approval.
Move approval.
I have a question for discussion on the motion. So we went through a lot to make sure that we were protecting personal services from transfer, and I see we have about $758,000 here. Is there no other discretionary fund source, let's say unrestricted fund balance, that might be able to address the shortfall that perhaps we have in some of the other areas, including legal expenses?
Well, that's still within that account or that fund, so it's not transferring salaries or funding around. It's moving it to cover detention expenses, so it's for the employee salary, so it's coming out of one salary category going into another, is what it is.
So it's already part of the budget.
It is. It's changing who's getting the salaries. So it's putting it into the detention salaries. So it's not moving it in to purchase anything outside of what the salaries are.
They're not calling it salary savings anymore. So it's a movement just within the fund as I saw it.
But the comma's the challenge. I'd be with you if the sentence just stopped. I'm looking at your memorandum. If the sentence stopped at the general fund transfers will provide appropriations for detention salaries, period. Okay, I got you. But there's a comma that then says legal fees, veterinary services, and food for the canines. I assume canine food and veterinary services may be de minimis, so I wouldn't waste our time with that discussion. Legal fees are not. So, I mean, can we get some clarity at least how much of the general fund transfers here, which may include our personal services costs, may actually go to the legal fees portion, or perhaps strike that from it entirely? And then we are kind of living by the 2021 board resolution.
Well, yes, the 675,000. So if you flip to the other side of your board book, up here at the top for personal services, it's just moving it around. So it's taking funding from Professional Standards Division that was not spent, Communications Support Unit and Professional Development and Research Bureau, and just taking that out of their pay for unspent and transferring it over to the Detention Services Unit to cover their salaries. That's it. That's all that's going over there for salaries.
And then to the extent there's on the contractual side, I think I'm seeing what you're saying. Then if I go down, the risk management, i.e. workers' comp, is where we're doing a shift towards
That is
legal
correct.
expenses.
Yes, sir. That is correct. So just to clarify, no salaries are being moved per our
Understood.
understanding last during the
last
budget
November.
cycle. That wouldn't go to cover anything other than salaries.
Okay. And detention services, why the I guess, perhaps unforeseen increase, or what's the story of cost there on the personal services side?
I would have to dig a little bit deeper, but I'm assuming overtime. I don't know if it's.
I might be able to speak to that. Our detention services is yet another area where we're critically staffed. In fact, we just lost one more this past week. So we have been incurring a lot of overtime in that area. We've even, in fact, there's a possibility if we get any shorter, probably like if we lose like 2 or 3 more employees before getting more, we could potentially just have to reduce our detention services to 1 station instead of 2. So that I can tell you that is an overtime expenditure that could possibly explain that.
Does this then relate? I'm hearing elsewhere in the department, increased overtime costs are kind of a driver that keeps us from doing other things that we may want, like salary increases and all of that. I assume that's the same story in detention services too. So our understaffing is leading to the increased overtime expense
Yes,
and thus necessitates the transfer.
yes. Which is one reason why we redeployed some of those proactive officers into patrol cars where we have to have a minimum staffing
Mm-hmm.
that we were unable to meet unless we had people work overtime.
Mr. Mayor, to your point, we did provide for salary increases in this budget. Everybody who was at top got, I believe, a 5% raise, and then everybody who was not at top got a step increase on their anniversary date. So we were able to and are able to continue.
On the, I appreciate this discussion. I may still be a no vote, but you've explained a lot for me. Can I ask a question on contractual services briefly?
Yes, sir.
On the workers' comp, we are foreseeing no later need for that in terms of, so the transfer we're making does go from an area of some import, but are we not spending as much as we perhaps had foreseen with workers' compensation in connection with it, so we're more comfortable making that transfer?
Yes, that's what the city put into our budget when we had already budgeted in the categories where we need the workers' comp. So this was money that's sitting in there, not being used. So we wanted to divide it out and put it in areas that we do need. So.
Good. One other question on legal expenses. Is there a way that we can, and perhaps there is by contract, but I don't know if we usually do this, actually stagger perhaps our payments or back them up a bit? So instead of paying, let's say, a $1 million settlement on December 1st, we can recognize that there's some expense, but hold the payment for, let's say, next fiscal year or something of that sort with a plaintiff's lawyer or something like that to avoid encumbering all that expense on the current budget year.
Now, I've seen one other time where we have done that. It worked out to an agreement. We did not have the funds to pay it in one fiscal year, but we were so close to the next fiscal year that we were able to defer that. Now, I can't recall if that came at an additional interest, if you will, for making the plaintiff wait, but we're always looking at ways to make a budget work.
Can we evaluate that as an option in addition to, I think a few meetings ago, I had a question about liability insurance. In the event we wish to explore that, just what does that look like as a cost perspective? And this is something that's not unique to a fire department, to a police department. See, I give up my thoughts in advance. It's something that we are considering too in connection with, are we in a position to handle theoretically a $30 million hit? Or is it something where finally it seems the insurance approach might be cost effective for the taxpayers long term? If we could get some report back in the future as a board in connection with what that looks like, if it makes sense, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And I know Deputy Chief Niemeyer's talked about this at a few meetings. We've been working on it. A lot more than we thought was going into this, just rather than, sending a few emails, making a phone call and getting the numbers. They're wanting a lot of detail, and our folks are working on it. So I'm hopeful I will have something for the board next month.
It's not as easy as them looking at your car and giving you a quote. It's more.
Yeah, and I think we thought it may have been, but no, it's not. Not even close.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, there's a motion still.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no.
I'll vote no.
Ayes have it. And so moved. All right, the next item.
Item B, adjustment to special revenue accounts for fiscal year 2022-23. I request your approval to appropriate $2.5 million to the liability self-retention fund from the general fund risk management account for anticipated claims. It is also requested that $4.5 million be appropriated from the unappropriated fund balance of the liability self-retention fund for potential settlements. If you don't have any questions, I recommend approval.
I move approval.
I second it.
Been moved and second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Item C, Avamar data domain replacement. The Avamar data domain is responsible for storing daily backups of KCPD databases and other files containing criminal justice information. The current data domain is experiencing storage capacity issues, and the equipment is reaching the end of life. To avoid a collapse to the system, I'm requesting approval for the Avamar data domain replacement through Converge One for $338,026.46, utilizing the Cooperative School District of Greater Kansas City contract. If you don't have any questions, I do recommend approval.
I move approval.
Second.
Been moved and second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it. So moved.
Item D, alarm upgrade. Early this year, we began experiencing problems with the alarm system covering all KCPD facilities. At that time, the cost to repair the system was $85,200 and approved at the Bureau level. Funds for this repair were encumbered in the 2021-22 fiscal year. However, during the repair process, it was determined the system was at end of life and the parts to fix the system were no longer available. The recommendation was that a total upgrade was necessary at an additional cost of $79,250. Although the initial cost of this project has already been approved for 2021-22 funding, the total cost of this now $164,450 and requires board approval. If you don't have any questions, I do request your approval to utilize CNC Group as a sole source purchase for this project at a total expenditure of $164,450.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If the city still owns all the buildings, why don't we ask them or us to fund this alarm system? I'm in the penny pinching part of the year already. And so, I mean, would this be the type of expense that we could just ask them to cover since it's protecting property that's under their ownership?
You know, that I don't know. I'm certainly willing to do that. It's just right now we're at a crossroads here because this may cause a problem because we've already encumbered funds in one fiscal year. And if we don't spend them on this, that money goes away. So I don't know if it could be a half with the city on the remaining 79,000.
Let me see if I can do this for you. If we can, the council doesn't meet until the end of the month. If I can get, because you're looking for, I guess the total project cost is 164. Today's appropriation asks for a little under 80. I mean, we can test our political talent in Captain Graves' lobbying and see if we can get $80,000 to protect the facility. If it doesn't work, we'll come back next month and vote on it. But that
that works for me.
30 days isn't a problem.
Well, I mean, our system is
I understand
failing,
end of
right.
life, but if you're telling us we'd be in big trouble if we didn't do it until December.
Yeah, I think we would be in trouble. It's one of those we need now.
Okay. All right.
I'd be happy to at least try to get this.
Um,
I
can-
just want to know the urgency.
Can we discuss this in
Understood.
closed session?
Understood. Yes.
Please? All right.
Got it. Hold the item.
We'll hold that item.
Item E, bid number 2023-12, false alarm management. On June 29th, 2022, an RFP was open for outsourcing the false alarm management system. This primarily came about as a way to increase efficiency, potentially reduce community alarm permit costs, seek a fiscally responsible way to upgrade our current alarm management software programs, and account for attrition within the section. Recommend approval to award the outsourcing of the false alarm management system to Central Square based on their many years of expertise and their 19 to 81% split with the department. There is no cost to the department.
Let me make sure I understand. This is because private companies or private residences have alarm systems. And sometimes the alarm goes off, the police respond, and the alarm was the failure, not a need for the police. Is that right?
Correct.
And so it's a way to have somebody other than the police department monitoring that and working on getting compliance with the ordinances or whatever, where they're supposed to register their alarms and that sort of thing, right?
Yes, it's a couple of things. This company is more robust than the police department through attrition. We have staffing concerns. Right now, we're on the honor system that if you have an alarm, you're going to let us know that you have an alarm. We collect the alarm permit fee. And then we go from there because these positions are self-funded positions through the alarm fees. Well, the alarm companies, they contract with or this company here contracts with alarm companies, so they know everyone in Kansas City who has an ADT system or Vivint or what have you, and they are able to know that and know that either one, they're in compliance and they have their alarm permits, or they don't.
And they collect the fee with your alarm company collects the fee and you don't maybe not even know you have a permit.
Say that again.
On my house, I have an alarm system and the company that I pay registers with the police department, pays the fee. I didn't even know I had a permit. I just knew I had an alarm system. And that's what I'm saying. It is seamless for most companies and residences because their alarm company takes care of it.
Correct. And it streamlines the whole process. Yes.
So who sets the fines? Like for false alarms, there are tickets that are set out. I've gotten a couple of them.
Me too.
So in this scenario, who sets the fine?
Well, the fine it's determined in policy and
So my
Here or the
question
city?
is, they can't just
no,
arbitrarily.
they're not the ones setting
Okay.
the fine or the fine. Correct.
So city ordinance
Yes.
sets a fine for a false alarm.
Correct.
Have we thought about, this is my continued try to create more revenue streams. Have we thought about in some way going after the security alarm companies themselves? A comparison is kind of, there are Airbnbs in Kansas City. And we're trying to set up a regulatory scheme that penalizes people who are using the source, but really the bad actor in some ways could be that we could hold liable the company that will actually be more consistent in paying us fees, paying us fines, among other things. So rather than the police department trying to kind of chase after and generate funds, even perhaps with this being a good contract from individuals and having them send taxpayers bills, can't we just say there are 10 companies that do a lot of work in Kansas City? Tell us at the beginning of the year, if you've got 1,000 people, 500, what's your false alarm total? And then we're able to more quickly yield 600,000 from ADT, let's say, rather than this kind of more difficult process.
Yeah, this is something that why we want to go to this company, because we just don't have the staffing
no.
to do that. We have 2 civilians and a supervisor down there covering 322 square miles. So yeah, this is something that we can look at with the company because they are nationwide. Because they have these contracts with all these alarm companies, they can cast a bigger net and know who has the alarms. And to your point, Mr. Mayor, about collecting more of that revenue.
And if there's a sworn officer down there, that officer should be reporting to patrol.
Oh, there's not.
Okay.
No,
When you
no,
said
it-
2 civilians, I wanted,
I'm sorry, yes, 2 civilian employees and 1 civilian supervisor.
okay.
Yeah,
all
sorry,
civilians.
yes.
Okay.
Right.
I don't want sworn officers doing stuff like that. We need them on the streets.
But I like the revenue capture idea, so can I add to your list of things on top of what I've already given you?
Yes, sir.
And maybe this is more for research and development, but if there was some sort of ordinance that I think allows the city, or perhaps buying through the department, to have more revenue capture from actually seeing it as a lawyer, looking at the alarm operators as your defendant, could that in some way be the more efficient way for it? I still support the contract, but Central Square going to them first rather than perhaps the individuals. I'd be interested in that.
Okay, yeah, we, this company comes highly regarded. They're the professionals in it, and I'm sure they'll do everything that we ask that they can, so. Okay.
Thank you. I'll second the motion, or I'll move approval.
Second.
All right. Heard the motion, ready for the question. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Threw me off there for a minute.
Item F, Audit Services RFP 2019-5. On January 8th, 2019, the board approved a 1-year contract for audit services with an option to renew for 4 additional 1-year periods with Hood and Associates, formerly Cochran Head Vick and Company. I recommend the board approve a 4th and final 1-year contract with Hood and Associates at an anticipated cost of $79,480.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Item G, RFP 2023-13, Risk Management and Claim Management System. The department identified a need for improved claim and incident management and reporting. An RFP for a risk management and claim management system was issued to obtain proposals for a system that has increased functionality that will allow the department to automate and include claim and incident reporting and management for the following 4 department elements: the Office of General Counsel, the Human Resources Division, the Accountability and Discipline Coordinator, and the Internal Affairs Unit. An evaluation committee comprised of representatives of the impacted elements who reviewed all submitted proposals and believes Origami Risk provides the best services to fit their needs. I recommend awarding RFP 2023-13 Risk Management and Claim Management System to Origami Risk for a 3-year contract that does include a non-funding clause. The first contract period will be $165,675, which includes the subscription service annual cost and a one-time cost for implementation and setup services. The additional contract periods will be an additional cost of $80,550 for a total contractual cost of $326,775. If you do not have any questions, I recommend your approval.
I have a question. The non-funding clause, what that's saying is we can't commit dollars years in advance, right?
Yes.
So they're saying this is what we hope will happen if the board each year approves these, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I move approval.
Question for you.
Yes.
While we discuss. I understand. So what exactly are these people doing? I get it's risk management and claim management. Are they traveling here and telling us what we do to mitigate risk? If so, in what areas? Is it just a technology platform at which we keep track of car accidents? What are we doing?
Well, that liability claims, it tracks, for example, internal affairs. It will track the complaints coming in, not just, walk into internal affairs, but if they come into Office of Community Complaints, it's tracking the software for that. It's tracking for Medicare, Medicaid claims. Some of the further details, I wasn't part of the committee, so I think maybe Captain Heinen.
Miss Dodge, do you know a lot?
We use it to keep track of all our payouts, all our settlements. So it's more of a software, the latter that you described. It is not them coming in and advising in any way. It's systems management for our data so that we can then write reports.
Do we have something like this now?
We do. It's with Riskmaster. We had used it previously. We upgraded it last year. We did an RFP and they didn't bid in this RFP process, but that's who we utilize now. And I believe that contract ends in January.
It does, and I think the consensus of this group was that Riskmaster was getting a little antiquated and not as robust as this system here. So,
Do we use this risk management system to then advise us on ways to, I guess, avoid further risk? Or is this more of a pure, almost like exists at a law firm, just where your data, your suits, your bills, and all of that exist?
Correct. It's not, we don't calculate in it. This was a high risk stop that involved property damage. They're coded as it's a property damage or it's a traffic or that, but that's really just what we code and put in as data. That kind of analysis happens every day when we get, we get duty reports and we look at those and we look at the body worn and we're constantly analyzing how better or are we making good decisions.
So this is more, we had 30 vehicular accidents, we keep track of them and how much they cost, not the why or what was happening with each.
Or what other claims we've settled or have pending. So we have so many different areas we have to report to that it makes that system easier. And so we're expanding that out to other areas, including internal affairs.
Understood. Thank you.
So is this contract comparable to the one we're getting rid of, or is it more expensive or?
it's a little bit more. I don't have all those numbers there, but I think just the functionality of it and the fact that it's robust and can be utilized at other departments other than the four that it's going to be utilized for right now outweighs the cost.
It also is going to store more data. We originally had this and utilized it for both our litigation and our workers' comp. We took that out when we contracted with GB, when we had a third-party administrator for our work comp. So that data came out. So we minimized significantly our utilization for it last year. So that's why it's going to cost more this year. We've expanded. It's got more information kept in it and run by more people.
Did you? Is there a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no.
I'll go no.
So moved.
Item H, 2019 Project Safe Neighborhood Subaward. Kansas City Metropolitan Crime Commission passed through the fiscal year 2019 Project Safe Neighborhood Subaward KCPD. This award in the amount of $161,716 is for funding a crime gun intelligence center analyst, a gang squad analyst, and overtime for violent crimes, DNA, and firearms tax. Kansas City Metropolitan Crime Commission was approved for an extension of this award and passed the extension onto the department. The amended extension of the grant award period is from September 30th, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. If you don't have any questions, I request your approval to accept this subaward change.
Second.
All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Almost there. Item I, 2022 DNA Capacity Enhancement and Backlog Reduction Program Award. The Office of Justice Programs awarded the department the 2022 DNA Capacity Enhancement and Backlog Reduction Program Award. The amount of the award is $653,764 and runs from October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2024. This award is 100% federally funded and provides salary and benefits for 6 forensic specialists, equipment, supplies, travel, and training. This will be the 21st year of funding. If you don't have any questions, I request your approval.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it. So moved.
Item J, Law Enforcement Support Office Property Program. The department wishes to participate in the Missouri Department of Public Safety Law Enforcement Support Office Property Program and a state plan of operations. The Law Enforcement Support Office Program allows the federal government to transfer certain types of property to states and local law enforcement agencies. This came about from the bomb and arson section, which was offered much needed equipment to enhance their capabilities, operations, and functionality at little to no cost. Because the department is not a part of this program, the bomb and arson section could not receive the equipment. The department was part of this program in the past, and it is my recommendation we rejoin to take advantage of this cost-saving resource. If you don't have any questions, I request your approval.
And this is like joining it's a membership in an organization, but each time we want to take advantage of whatever they have to offer, it comes to the board to approve it, right? What I'm thinking is, I don't want us buying a tank. And you're not going to join this and buy a tank without talking to us first, right?
Yeah, I don't foresee us getting a tank or a bazooka anytime soon.
Okay, well,
But yes,
I don't want there to be any question that we're joining and other departments might use it to buy certain equipment that we would not want in Kansas City. And I just want to make sure we know that you'd ask us before we did anything like that.
we can, yes, whatever parameters you set, we will follow. I mean, what we typically do when we accept these items, we notify you of, accepted donations. But if you want to have overall approval before we accept those, because that's typically done, but
Something big, like a bazooka, like you said,
Right.
or a tank, I want you to come to us first.
you bet, yes,
We
we'll.
can develop some criteria if you want. I don't want to know every time they need another robot part, which is what this is for.
Correct. Yeah. We have good judgment in our
Thank you.
division.
I move approval.
Second.
Moving and second, all in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Thank you. Item K, requested budget for fiscal year 2023-24. All of you have had the opportunity to review the proposed 2023-24 budget request and the additional letter explaining minor changes. Therefore, I will present the highlights and answer any questions you may have. To meet the needs of the department in the ensuing fiscal year, the total requested funding for fiscal year 23-24 is $294,654,800, of which $250,901,868 is from the general fund, $20,560,892 from other city funds, and $23,192.40 from the treasurer's accounts. Of the $271,462,760 in city funds requested, Jackson County grant and self-funded activities total $16,163,565, an increase of $839,032 in city funds. These funds are advanced to manage programs and will be remitted back to the city or unspent. The budget as requested will provide for 1,258 officers and 616 civilians. In addition, starting pay for first-year officers will be increased to stay competitive in our recruiting efforts. We're asking for pay increases for all employees. Current members who are at the top of their pay scale will receive a 4.95% raise at the beginning of the fiscal year. Those below top of their pay scale will receive a step increase on their anniversary. The department maintains that to adequately serve a city of our size, 1,382 officers is the minimum staffing needed. However, we do not anticipate being able to reach this staffing level in fiscal year 23-24, and therefore, once again, we've self-assessed ourselves 150 law enforcement positions. Also included are 5 decision packages, most notably a new radio system estimated at $15.8 million. This is the 5th year in a row the department has made this request. The department is at a critical point as the portable radios are entering their end of life and at the end of manufacturer support. Once approved, the updated transmittal letter will be signed and presented to the board and city along with the updated requested budget. If you don't have any, darn.
The radio is still an issue. I've spoken to several city council members who said they thought they had approved it. They thought it had been paid for. They liked the idea of the contract, long-term contract. I don't understand why it's still an issue.
And it sounds like it went up because it was 10 million. Now we're talking 15.8.
Well, I combined, if you look, it's one part are the in-car and then the handheld. So I combine the totals together. But yeah, I mean, it's only going to keep going up the longer we go.
Mr. Mayor, do you know why we haven't gotten this resolved?
I do not know anything since last month's discussion on the radio that's new with radios. Well, our last idea, I thought, was, like you were noting, the contract, and we'd pay down, basically you're bonding out or something of that sort would be the way that it was taken care of.
Yeah, I thought we were leasing.
Right.
And the
Well,
city
we,
was gonna pay
we
for it.
talked
We were
about
gonna do
that.
an ordinance.
That would be, we can't get into a lease, but the city.
Right.
That's what I'm
The
saying.
ordinance.
The city can do that, and I understood that the mayor was in favor, and I've talked to several city council members that are in favor, and I don't understand why it hasn't been done.
Well, we're still, and I know Deputy Chief Niemeyer has had conversations over at City Hall with representatives, but we feel that we still need to leave it in
Put it in
our
both
ask
budgets.
as a decision package. So I didn't mean to lead you to believe that we aren't working on it. He is working on it, but I mean, we still need to send it over and be.
In favor, aren't you, Mr. Mayor?
I do like the leasing approach. Now, is the question, do we do it now or do we do it next year? Is that where the debate is, or?
Well, I mean,
You
if we
don't
can
care,
get into
right?
it now, I mean, if we
Right.
could do it now, that'd be wonderful. We
it's
just
not
don't have the
15
funding there on our.
In so many words, and I'm sorry but it's not necessarily a $15 million ask. It's a $2 million per annum type.
With the lease, yes, that's,
If we do the lease.
Right.
Otherwise, it's going to be 15 million.
I thought we were all in a path of going to the lease, and we were going to talk to the finance department and the city manager and others to.
and I apologize, I
You're not
wasn't in those meetings. I do know that Deputy Chief Niemeyer is working on it. But this, just for the purpose of being in the budget as an ask, as we still go through this, I mean, this could all be for naught and be a
We
moot
won't
issue,
buy it
but,
twice. I
but still
understand.
in there, yes.
Is Graves now?
It's-
Hey, the last meetings were, just like we said, the finance department was looking at the lease option over maybe like a 10-year thing that the city manager had mentioned putting in our budget. But the problem, what we expressed was we can't enter into agreement, the PD, but the city might be able to.
Right.
So that was the last conversations and possibly looking at leasing it.
How recently was that?
6 weeks, 5 weeks.
And then, so you're waiting for the finance department at the city to get back to you on.
Yeah, well, the last conversation I had was recently was to put it in the budget from the city manager.
Understood.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Well, I appreciate all the work that you've done on the budget, and it's, very thoughtful and very thorough. And obviously, it's a budget, so it won't necessarily, we'll have these appropriations month after month, but I move approval of the budget, of the proposed budget.
Second.
Second?
Can I ask a question for you? and I might vote in the negative on this too, but I still want to make sure we have a discussion. So we're expecting 12, what was our number of officers to be hired? The 1258 was our, and what do we estimate to be at the end of this year? This 22-23 fiscal year? I guess, or have we updated our estimate? When we approved the budget last year, I thought the number was something like 1262. Okay. So it was fairly close. So, and it seems as if this year it'll be difficult for us to get to that number. What can we say, and you may have answered one of them, gets us more confidence that we will be able to get to that higher number? Salary increases, I guess, being one part of it.
Salary increases, we increased our starting pay for a recruit officer, which I think it went somewhere from, I want to say about 46 to 50,000 a year. Basically, what we did was we eliminated. They start at one rate when they enter the academy. After 6 months, they get out of the academy. They go for their field training. They get a bump in pay. Well, basically what we did is we start them at that bump in pay. So those are some of the efforts that we're doing. We're looking at ways to pay their academy fees if they went to an outside academy up to, I think, an amount of like $6,000. Those are some of the things that we're doing to attract new members.
And I don't want to get too far afield right now because I imagine we'll have other chances for it. But this year, for example, in salary savings, assuming that we don't hit the 1,250 appropriated number for 22-23, which was however many hundreds of millions of dollars, question I have relates to whether we're actually at a, sorry, distracted just a little, but I would have thought that we could have instituted salary increases or other types of items in this budget year we're in now to try to make things more attractive. And but the reason I'm told we cannot is because of overtime costs, among other things. So we don't have a free $30 million, let's say, to spend on something. How, if next year we run into some of the same structural concerns, do we not find ourselves in the same position that we have been in this year?
Well, one of the things we're up against also is a ceiling of, it's an odd number that I had just read that we're offering, that we're putting in here a 4.95% raise. It's because that's the statutory limit. So we're held to that until, the statute has changed. So that's something that we're working on to raise the top level for all
We'll be
ranks.
back for it. Thank you.
And it seems to me too, what we're running into is legal agreements, settlements that maybe we're not putting enough in the budget for that as well. And then we're having to figure out where to.
Yeah, we try to estimate every year and project how much we think that we're going to spend in legal. We have routine conversations with the Office of General Counsel to see where they think we're going to be. Some of the cases that were 3 years ago are just now coming to fruition. They're getting pled out or whatever, and the judgments are being handed down. But another thing, if we put too much money into those accounts, then it's stuck there. If we run into an emergency where we need these funds on hand, well, we can't pull from our legal funds outside of that legal. So that's why, and Commissioner Wagner had brought up the question, we did increase how much we have in our legal funding, but if we put too much in there, it just sits there and we can't use it if we have an emergency for something else.
The other thing that I think General Counsel and the officers that do the training, the body cameras are teaching us a lot about how people are operating, how our officers are operating. And I expect those claims to go down because we're learning how to do things differently. So I don't want a lot of money sitting in that fund that I don't plan to use.
I'm good for now.
And to follow up on the radios, I've had a number of communications from Doug Stone, who's the attorney for the radio company, saying, you guys got to get on this. The rates are going to go up. So there is some urgency to getting this whole radio issue resolved. He keeps calling me almost weekly about this, and I say,
And it's been an ask for 5 years on the radios?
Yes.
Not this lease idea.
No, this lease that's a new
This is
idea.
new.
But we haven't had conversation on that, and you said 60 days probably, so it's time to have those
So
conversations.
how do we
with-
do
So
that?
that's what I was gonna ask. Do we reach out to the city manager? Who can actually get us going on?
If his answer was it should be in the next budget request, then I think they're probably trying to assign the appropriation then to the 23-24 budget. And that would, and so you would just be, you'd either be part of that ordinance. You'd probably be
Correct.
part of the budget ordinance.
Right. If you wouldn't mind, I can circle back with Deputy Chief Niemeyer and get up to speed on where we're at and or he's explored.
Because you probably also need, another MOU between the city and the department? Or do you even need that?
Yeah, I
talking-
think we
You know,
would.
yeah,
If
we
it's
talked
if it's a
about that.
lease,
I
I think we.
need to do something now because if prices are going up and we've had this conversation over and over and over. And I know I've talked to Deputy Chief Newmeyer a number of times when he's went to the city and talked to him about it and nothing's happened. And I
we wait
mean,
until the next fiscal year, they will have gone up.
Absolutely.
When-
Mr. Chief.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was in the meeting with Deputy Chief Niemeyer where we spoke to the city manager about the radio system, among other things. And he specifically said that it would be an appropriation for the next fiscal year and asked that it be put in the budget for the next fiscal year. And that he was not inclined to provide any funding in this fiscal year.
Does he understand the or is there a way for us to make sure he understands the urgency of this? Both us not having radios is really not an option. The
We
fact that
communicate
the
that.
price might go up, but I'd appreciate a way to have a meeting with the city manager, you, Niemeyer. I will go. I'll bet I could get this guy to go. I mean, we want him to understand that we can't have our officers out there with radios that may not work.
And we don't want to, I don't want to speak for them, but we have conveyed the urgency and they've had multiple meetings or went across the street multiple times to talk to the city manager. So I don't want the impression that, Major McCullum might not have been aware of all the meetings, but it's not like we've been sitting on this for 60 days. We have been reaching out constantly and consistently. And it's like Deputy Chief Hicks. I mean, that's the response that we're getting. We've been
When's
working on it.
delivery? When would delivery be of the radios? I mean, if we could get, 2,000 radios tomorrow, that'd be one thing. But if delivery is actually in April or May or what have you, then that speaks to something somewhat different. I mean, do we have an idea from the seller as to when that good actually would be delivered?
They have not provided us with a delivery date. We are working towards getting the project funded first, which is they're working with us on that to get the pricing and the project plan, but they have not provided a delivery date if it was funded.
Because it's not unusual, perhaps it seems it, but it's not unusual to actually finance delivery for something in the next budget year. Usually how we purchase fire trucks is we put it into the budget. They have the agreement with Ford for the ambulances, and then you start getting your delivery through the year. I haven't necessarily been in these conversations, though I could put myself in them, but nonetheless, I mean, I would hope that one, there's that understanding between the department and the city as to the leasehold interest. You probably need to get some sort of council approval, at least as to that, if there is some sort of contractual arrangement. And there's all types of stuff happening behind. I don't know if there's, go ahead.
I was just notified that it'd be a 6 to 8 week turnaround once funding was established.
Right. And then they start providing them and how many, have they laid out how many you get, or is it just replacing as you go?
We would submit the number of what we need, and I think they would just roll it out at one.
Just start going.
So if we waited until our budget is approved, that's in the spring, right? When is that?
March.
March,
And then we vote on it a month later.
April, and then it's 6 to 8 weeks?
If you wait till then.
so this,
Well, yeah. But somebody's suggesting that we have to wait till our next budget.
The
which
city
means-
manager is
Well,
suggesting that.
I don't know who is.
Just also
So-
remember that that's their delivery time for product. We have to consider our time for installation. So installing radio heads in cars and programming radios and getting them trained and sent out to officers.
A year from now.
Potentially,
We
yes.
can't wait that long.
So the problem is, this is a deja vu conversation because we had this before the last budget.
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, we had talked about taking it to the city then and getting them to pay, so we didn't put it in our budget. And then we talked about the ARPA funds, and then we talked, and still, a year later, we're in that same position. I think we need to address it now. We can't keep kicking the can down the road.
And take it out of a decision package and make it a core part of the budget would, I guess, be one, if we're trying to make sure it's
In
it's
there.
part of it all. I
Oh,
think,
it's a decision package now, isn't it?
Yes, it's
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
decision package, but
But I think it
she's
needs to
saying
be
put
in
it
the
in the
budget.
budget,
Right.
but not at a $10 million
Right.
expense. But
if we're estimating, and maybe this with respect to all these points, right? So what was our budget last year? $265 million. I mean, if it's a core part of it, then I guess we cut somewhere else. I was kind of interested, for example, in the presentation that the city put more workers' comp in than was necessary in the 22-23 budget, which I just don't get why, but whatever. I don't make those, I guess I do make those decisions at some point, but yeah, I would take it out of a decision package and say it's a core part of it all. Does anybody know what the annual lease would look like? Is that, Don knows numbers, is it $3 million a year? Probably.
I remember.
Well, that's what I thought.
I think it was like two.
What's that?
No,
He said it would
1.5
vary.
million, I think, each year.
And he said it would vary a little.
She knows.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it
she
wasn't,
said, oh, no.
but it wasn't on that $15 million figure, it was on
No.
$10
Right.
million.
You're right.
And if I may, I don't want to get lost. That one of the reasons we were looking at putting the $2 million a year lease in this is so this has some longevity past the 10 years.
Correct.
Because 10 years from now, we don't want to have to come back and have to do this again.
Exactly.
We want it in the budget every year. So it is, right. So it is just continually part of what KCPD does for radio maintenance.
So I make a motion that we put 2 million in the budget for this year for the radios and not part of the decision package.
We do have a category in our minor equipment funding that we could move some of that money out of there, because I think we have budget in here for $2.5 million that we could.
And get it done now.
I mean,
No,
Done
it's
in
in
this
this
new
coming,
budget,
this
not
coming,
the
yes, this
decision
new fiscal year that we're
But at
presenting
least
right
it's in
now.
the budget.
I think we should put it in the budget. The lease amount.
Agreed.
Yeah, an additional.
And everybody, and we'll approve it, 4 out of 5 of us at least
Yeah.
today.
Fair enough. I agree. On that, I agree.
So what figure, are we going with the $1.5 million or the $2 million figure?
Whatever it is, I
2 million for future.
think it's at least 2 million. With that change.
Yep. So it's almost if the person who made the motion amends the motion to
Yeah.
include the 2 million.
That's right. I do
Okay.
make a motion that we approve the budget with the addition of whatever the amount is for the lease of the radios.
For the
$2
2
million?
million.
$2 million, yeah, a year.
Is that about right? We don't know. huh?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number here. I would,
But whatever the number is for the lease arrangement that we're trying to execute with the,
Can we do a not to exceed 2.5 million?
it's 1.9 million for the lease.
I don't want to distract us too much, but it's, actually, that's fine. So it's 1.9 million for the lease. No one has done anything more with that information. I mean, so it's clear. The city understands it's 1.9 million, the department does, and there's been no further effectuation of that, ma'am.
That's right. The last meeting we had was a few weeks ago with the city manager's office, and it was with what Hicks had spoken in regards to the lease, and then as well as the purchase, which would be held over to the next year.
So if we approve that for this budget, is there a way for us to get the city to approve the lease now? So we can tell the company, the lease has been approved by the city and this is coming in our budget.
Certainly. I would suggest through the power of contract, you absolutely could try to negotiate, you could negotiate a package of some sort like that, where they're basically performing based upon the promise ahead that's there, right? If it's going to be an appropriation that's set for some set of years, particularly on the city side, because you can set that appropriation for 5 years, unlike I believe our budget could. So the funding's fully there, so the party probably could start performing.
I think, yes, we'd have to have an MOU with the
Yeah.
city saying that they
Yeah.
would provide that.
Because the point will be, we'll have to make sure it remains in the city's budget for however long the term is. That's the debate.
Right, that goes back to the original issue that we approached the city about. If they're willing to agree to that, then we're good. Otherwise, we're not getting radios because, we
Yeah.
can't.
But it's easier, at least in that regard, to Commissioner Kramer's point, because
In the budget,
you have an
yeah.
ordinance without a funding request necessarily, right? So in the world of politics, the hardest ordinance is going to be a $15 million ordinance December 1st that just says, hey, can we buy this? Right? And people say that's a lot. We got jails to think about all of that, right? Instead, some ordinance that's adopting an MOU, far less controversial. And then it's part, I would think, I don't know. But nonetheless, and then if it's part of the budget's ongoing, then it's got a funded source as well. We might have actually solved some of it here.
It seems like a very good solution, and surely the city will see it that way.
I don't see the problem with if the MOUs are only obstacle right now between our budget staff and city finance, I'm not really seeing the material reasons to be opposed to that. Unless there's just radios. Radios don't do anything other than, nobody can get mad about radios, I would think, so.
Only if we don't have them. And then
Right.
everybody in the city is going to be mad at us because people couldn't communicate.
Well, we should
I
put it
think
in
we
the
have
budget.
path, yeah.
So should we take it then out of a decision package
Put it in
portion
the
and put it, okay.
Yes.
And Christine, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think, though, it will impact our overall numbers and request for the city. So the transmittal letter should be.
It was $2 million.
So it will increase it because
$1.9
of,
million.
will come through the public safety sales tax.
Wait a sec. So you would take it from public safety sales tax? I can't hear you, sorry.
We could add it to, as a request through public safety sales tax.
Okay.
Otherwise, I mean, we have a little over 2 million already in equipment in the general fund. It's already in the budget, requested budget already
It's there for this year?
But not for
for
radios.
24.
Radios, but not for radios.
We have
small
Just in,
equipment.
for general.
We have 2 million for what in the,
We put a little over $2 million in the general fund for equipment this year. It was going to go towards other necessary equipment, but we can definitely use it for this as well.
What other-
I would leave it, I mean, unless you can get rid of it.
Otherwise, I would increase the request. I was personally thinking increasing it in the public safety sales tax fund. Usually, these types of items are through a bond, and the city designates a fund, and we pay down, like for the CAD RMS system, big projects like that. The city usually does a bond, and then we pay it out over so many years. That's why I was a little hesitant to go ahead and put it in the request this year, because without knowing how they want to handle it across the street, that's why we went with a decision package.
decision package, though, for the 7 years I've been voting on budgets, it seems like not a good place for things to live because they're rarely met unless they're actually going to salaries or increases or. The politics of it is, it's popular for politicians to vote for people getting paid. It's less popular for stuff sometimes. And so if the stuff is essential, why don't we actually just put it in the core of the budget?
I would say to that the city determines a certain amount they want to give us. And so if we're adding $2 million for this equipment, it's going to come from somewhere else.
And you're saying there's no $2 million set that would be a more appropriate decision package, a switcheroo, let's say, that could be. So the budget request you've made is 294 plus all the decision packages?
Mhm.
Wow. And so now we're just adding 2. All right.
Or you could, put 2 million for the radios in lieu of something.
We have 2 million in equipment already, a little over 2 million in the requested budget. It wasn't put in there for this, but it can be used for this.
Use for the radios. Okay, let's do that.
Say that again. What's the solution?
She says that they have $2 million in the budget for equipment,
Yeah.
not otherwise designated. And she had designated for radios,
Yeah.
and then have to work it out on the rest of the equipment. some
So
other
should
way.
we up that so we have spare for equipment then? Because if we're,
It's going to reduce.
yeah, I mean, I know the helicopter
Right.
stuff was 500,000 when we needed, parts for a helicopter or engine, so things like that happen.
But that's separate out. I mean, that's separated out, right? That's not.
Helicopters.
Decision
Yeah.
package. We could always also, I actually like this, to do one point that's going to sound cheeky, but isn't necessarily intended that way. I mean, if for legal settlements, we have some higher amount getting us back to my liability insurance point, right? We could always reduce 2 million there, right? Which may exist in our normal budget, right? How much do we have in the settlement expenses account for the proposed budget?
How much have we requested?
Yes.
2.5 million.
2.5 million? Okay. And it was 4.8 last, but it doesn't matter. But nonetheless,
That's fund balance. Yeah, we're down to, with this, what was just approved today and what we have to spend out, we'll have under $1 million.
and for the 23-24 budget, how much are we, and I don't want to do work for personal injury lawyers, so I won't get into it all. Okay, I understand. We'll figure it out. We have somewhat of a path. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you can do it. We got faith in you.
So we need a motion for the
We have a motion.
1.9.
Well,
No,
we
for
don't,
the-
I
for
don't
the
know if we've got
budget.
the 1.9.
2 million for
locked in
equipment is
yet
now for the
until we get a
radios.
contract for it. Because it very easily could be more than that, depending upon when this thing starts and gets signed. They've been holding it open for a little while. I don't know that it's even still open anymore at 1.9, is it?
I don't have that answer for you.
Well, I mean, they won't raise it by enough to make a material difference in the $1.9 million.
I don't know. These prices are going up because of supply chain problems. And
Well, make it 2.5 million. Then we should cover the.
Yeah, I think any government official who can negotiate half worth their salt, who is saying you have an opportunity for a $15 million contract where the payment starts in 6 months, should still be able to actually negotiate that. I at least from what I've seen in other, and this isn't on y'all, this will be over on somebody across the street. And so I think, to Commissioner Wagner's point, that can get done. Or else they're giving up a $15 million sale, which.
So I move that we approve the budget request as presented, but including roughly $2 million for the radio package on a lease, radio lease package or whatever you want to call
I'll second the motion.
all right, it's been moved and second. All in favor by sign of aye.
it.
Aye.
All opposed by no.
I vote no on the whole thing.
Now,
like
I
the
would
agreement.
still like to see that fund increase by at least 500,000 for equipment if we need something in there. Can we,
It's still in there. 2 million is still in there. They haven't taken it out of
No,
equipment.
no. We're using that now for the radios.
No, that he added new money.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the 2 million from equipment that used to exist under equipment is now 2 million for radio equipment. in
Yeah.
the proposed budget.
Yeah. So
But we
that's
need
why I'm
an
saying we
MOU.
need to
Who's
increase
going to
the
do the
equipment.
MOU?
The decision package.
No?
No, it's taken, it's gone out of the decision
All right.
package and put into the budget.
Who's going to do the MOU? David, is that you?
Assume
Holly.
the acting deputy chief needs to,
I'm sorry, sir.
oh, David's gonna,
David or Holly, either one. And that'll be done by when? So we're not here 6 weeks later saying, what did we say? So can we have an MOU by Friday?
You're only talking to half the issue.
Well, she's. gonna
City's the
talk
other
to the
half.
city.
I don't think at this point you necessarily have a commitment by the city, but
Right.
I'm happy to draft a potential MOU in regards to a long-term lease for radios. I'm happy to do that by Friday, and I always confer with Mr. Kenner as well.
Good. And then that gives us something that once we set the meeting, we've got something in hand.
Right.
It can always be modified, but as long as we are pie in the sky, we got a thought. So once we get it on paper, we got something to work with.
To Commissioner Kramer's point, this will wipe out our minor equipment.
I'm sorry.
So that's why I was saying we need to up that.
or you need to add a decision package to.
Yeah, it'd be easier to add a decision package for $500,000, $250,000 or something like that for minor equipment.
And not minor equipment, but equipment. They're two separate categories.
That's for new equipment,
Mhm.
maintenance, all of that. Yeah, I think
What do
we need to
Pardon?
put that in the budget, though. I mean, that's something that we're going to need going forth operating.
I mean, you're talking big dollars, 290 million?
294 million.
294.
294 million. I think we can work our way around this issue if we approve $294 million ask of the budget.
And it's not going to be our last time to get to talk about this.
So, but at least we got the radio,
Yeah.
I mean,
In
off the
the
table and in the
Right.
budget and
Right.
the MOU drafted and made a lot of progress on that part, that portion of it,
Absolutely.
at least.
And we.
Right. All right. What's next?
That's it.
All right. So
Thankfully.
Now, was there a motion for the overall budget?
There was.
Yes, there was, and it was approved.
All right.
The mayor seconded the motion.
And then voted against it. Interesting.
All doable, I believe. Different legislative action.
All right. Professional Development and Research Bureau, Acting Deputy Chief Paul Luster.
Tough act to follow. I'll do my best. Find my information under tab F as in Frank. The first page, you'll see the basic training class summary or the academy update. The senior class or the 175th entrant officer class will graduate this Friday at 6 p.m. at the academy. You're all welcome to be there. We'd enjoy to have you. There'll be 28 total recruits graduating from that class, with 15 of those being for KCPD, and the remaining represent 6 other regional agencies. The 176th entrant officer class started last month on October 17th. They'll graduate May 4th of 2023. 39 total recruits in that class, with 26 of those being KCPD. Any questions? I'll move on to the consent agenda for policies.
I had a quick question. Out of the 15 that are graduating this Friday, how many did we start with?
We started this class with, or that class, the 175th. We started with 19 for KCPD. And then out of those, I had 2 injuries. So out of the 4 that were lost, 2 are back in this class, what we call a recycle, when they rehabbed from their injuries. So the other 2, one was an academic and the other was personal reasons. So we really only lost 2 KCPD out of that class.
Great, so our numbers are actually up. We're just,
Yeah, we're not, I think we're on a better pace of not losing as many as we had in the past, with just a couple of tweaks here and there to some mindset towards training. Okay. Next is project number 1261, which is our procedural instruction for use of department and private vehicles. This was a standard 5-year review. We updated some terminology. We incorporated a department memo and a special order that were out there relating to some bargain agreement compliance and the change in the residency law. And we would recommend approval.
What do we do with residency now? What's that story with take-home vehicles and non-residency?
So they're not, we had to look at, we have the 30-mile radius, Mr. Mayor. So as far as if you live outside of, if you move outside the city and you're not in a city that we incorporate, you can't take the vehicle home. It has to be left at an apartment facility. It can't be taken home. But for instance, if you live in North Kansas City and we encompass all of North Kansas City, you could take that vehicle home with you. So that was the distinction that we made on that. You can't take it into, and so in the proposed policy, you'll see the list of cities that Kansas City encompasses, sorry, still talking budget, not encumbered, encompasses. And you will, we allow cars to go to those cities, but anything beyond that, they're not allowed to be taken home.
I appreciate that compromise, and in some ways it makes sense, right? A Raytown and North Kansas City is fully within Kansas City, Missouri itself. I still have still have real concern, just given the fact that I know a lot of our residents fundamentally support the take-home policy, not just for the emergency reasons, but also they actually like the presence of a police vehicle or knowing that it's nearby, that sort of thing, in Kansas City, Missouri. And while I certainly want to bless my friends in Raytown and Grandview with such an opportunity from our officers, I think that starts to kind of question why we even have the program. So I thank you for that compromise. Just I'll note my reservation with it.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And that, this visibility is one positive thing, but also we focus on our ability to respond to critical incidents and the timeliness in which we can do that with the cars. So we have to kind of weigh both of those. You're certainly right. It's nice to have those in the community being visible, but we also want to have, be able to respond to those to the best of our ability and as fast as we can.
Understood.
Have we had vandalism? I read something in the report about vandalism on some of our vehicles.
Yeah, every once in a while we'll have some vandalism that will occur, or every once in a while a theft that will occur. So we try to mitigate that. You'll see that was one of the categories within the policy of if there's a security concern that vehicle can be allowed to be taken home.
What do we pay on take-home vehicles per year? Is there a cost estimate of what that might?
It's hard to, that's been brought up before, several years, probably 5 years ago, maybe, if that. It's hard to determine. You can kind of just take there's some national standards on what wear and tear is on a vehicle. And then it's kind of hard to separate out fuel because you don't know exactly which gallon of gas was used for which purpose. So you can do it, but it's all an estimate with that.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. All right. Need a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no.
No.
Ayes have it, and so moved.
The next project is Project 1391. It's personnel policy for holiday compensation. Major changes for this policy was just removing some redundant language. We incorporated Juneteenth. It was previously documented on a department special order, and we updated some of the overtime instructions just to make it easier or increase some efficiency with our accounting staff, and we'd recommend approval.
Second.
Second.
And moved in second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Last policy is Project 1349. It's actually two procedural instructions. Police involved incident response and outside agency investigation of police-involved incidents. This was a major revamp with the overall objective to ensure that we have a fair and thorough investigation of major incidents as determined by the chief or his or her designee. So we wanted to document the process for both these incidents on how KCPD will handle them, but also when outside agencies such as the Highway Patrol come in to investigate a major incident. So we wanted to get all that down in policy and make sure that was very clear, which ultimately, as we were working through the project, kind of separated them into a KCPD role and an outside agency role. We thought that was a lot clearer. Based on a lot of feedback from different internal and external stakeholders, we also overhauled the notable event review panel. If you remember, that's the panel that would meet after a major incident, but sometimes or every time we would wait till that investigation was completely done. So that review could be, many months down the road. In order to get better and get more real-time feedback, we made that initial review. That panel will meet initially within 5 business days of an incident. So that gives us a chance to look at any training issues, any personnel actions that may result from that incident. We think that'll provides a lot better real-time feedback to the community and to the department members as we're working through these major incidents. And we would request approval on that.
Second.
Moving to second, all in favor by sign of aye.
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 All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Last thing that's not in your book, but on the screen there, you'll see, I just wanted to review a trip that our PAL kids got to take to St. Louis. So there had not been a field trip at PAL for an extended period of time. So I'm just going to share with you a little bit of a letter that Sergeant Fabian, who works at the Police Athletic League, sent to the PAL board regarding this trip. This was last month. And the trip started with a lot of pre-planning, and then Officer Walker took all 8 kids, all boys that got selected for this trip based on their attendance, their schoolwork, and their level of engagement at PAL. So Officer Walker took them all to get haircuts before the trip, while Officer Swaggart, actually at the PAL Center, had them bring all the bags with their clothes they were going to take on the trip, and she washed and dried all their clothes, made sure all the toiletries were packed and everything they would need along with snacks. So we wanted to make sure it was successful from the start. And I just wanted to read to you a little bit of what Sergeant Fabian wrote as she was thanking the PAL board. The PAL board approved and funded this trip, and she said that the trip went very smooth and from the get-go because of all the pre-work, and that there were many opportunities for teaching moments. Each child returned home safe, full of memories, new experiences, and maybe most importantly, rest. And so this is what's always humbling when we're talking about the Police Athletic League. She said on the final road home, each child was asked what their favorite part of the trip was. One said the arch, one said the train. They got to take the train to St. Louis. All the others said the sleep in the beds, talking about the beds in the hotel. And so Sergeant Fabian said, we don't always know what our PAL kiddos' homes lives are like. We don't know how our kiddos sleep or the chaos that surrounds them when they lay their heads down at night. But we do know for 2 nights, these children slept peacefully in clean beds surrounded by loving, caring police officers who ensured their safety. They loved it, and we love you for making it happen. And she wrote that to the PAL board. So a fantastic trip. We had a PAL event last weekend. Mayor was at, Chief was at, and several others. And we did a fund to need so there could be more field trips for PAL. And what some of us, and I didn't even comprehend, was a lot of these PAL kids, their life consists of a 2-mile radius of their house. That's where they live. They go to school, where they shop, where they go to the PAL Center. So just a trip to St. Louis was huge, and the activities that we got to do. So special thanks to Sergeant Fabian, Officer Brandon Walker from PAL, Officer Allie Swaggart from PAL, and Officer Malcolm Whitelaw from the media office, who also went with them. So lifelong memories and a wonderful program. We're proud of it, and we hope to be able to do some more trips in the future. Just a couple upcoming events. Mentioned the Academy graduation Friday, and then the recruit class will be doing their group run that Monday here at headquarters. Don't have any questions? That concludes my presentation.
I have a question. Give
Okay.
me a progress report on your research on childcare.
Yes, so the research and development, they had looked into it. The chief and I talked briefly out too. We had looked into it. There is some cities that offer it as like a city entity. We have not located a police department specific yet, but we've reached out to those peer cities. So we're still gathering info. Hopefully I'll have a more robust report for you as that info. I just didn't really have enough to present to you on this time, but
I know it's
yeah,
happening.
no, we're working on it, ma'am. We're trying to get it in. So
Thank you.
I will hopefully have a more robust update for you in the near future.
Holly Dodge.
Good morning.
Morning.
My information is on tab G. We have our monthly report, and we have 2 submitted appeals. Do you want to handle those together separately?
Separately.
On the first one, our recommendation and request is to suspend the unarmed license until August 2023.
I move that we do exactly what you recommended.
Second.
Now that's on the Burge.
Correct.
We're going to discuss that a little.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, that's a motion. A motion can be made and seconded, and then you discuss.
Yes. Yeah. I thought that the Burge case was a little bit unique, seeing as how I deal with 500 students every day and many parents and parishioners. And so gentleman needs to work. I think he explained his case, and I would really like to see that appeal overturned and give him the opportunity to work.
So you'd say issue the license now.
Yes.
He is currently licensed. Our request was to suspend his license during the term of the probation, which would be August 2023, it would end. So then that recommendation, I think, to clarify, would be that he not be suspended. Then he would remain as a licensed unarmed, just to clarify.
That's what I was hoping would happen on that particular.
And we know that the probation's gone away, and if he does something else, we'll find out about that.
It's self-reporting, and in this incident, it wasn't self-reported. So
That was the reason for the
us
suspension, yeah.
hearing is dependent on somebody letting us know. We certainly have the capability of calendaring and following up.
He had a 29-year record of a clean record with no incidents. And, sometimes you forget about all the steps when you have these other reporting issues going. So I know there's already a motion on the floor, but I'd like to offer a substitute motion.
I would accept a substitute motion. I'd have to ask my second.
To move to the closed session, you're saying?
No. I'd like to offer a substitute motion that we grant him his license.
Not put him on probation.
Yeah, not put him on probation.
So that he be continued, you would grant his appeal and not suspend his license.
Correct.
I mean, we're still talking about the Burge fellow?
Yes.
Correct.
The offense gets us fairly close to being a person categorized not to be able to even possess a firearm.
It's unarmed, isn't it?
It's
I
unarmed.
think his is unarmed.
So may I ask just a broader question? Why are we even in this business at this point? If you have extensive carrying rights, if you have extensive, I guess he's an unarmed guard, so he's just walking around the place, because somebody alleged to have at least abused or harmed a juvenile daughter to me is a slightly worrisome person that I would think, back to our discussion with the acting deputy chief, exposes us to a whole different world of liability. And I may want to be in that game for our sworn officers. I don't know why I would want to be in that game for this gentleman who might have exhibited this with a minor person. So I guess I'll just suggest you find another second. Or you find another second.
I'll withdraw my motion. How about that?
I agree with the mayor on that.
So I offer a substitute motion. And it is to grant him his privilege to work and not be suspended until August 23rd.
Grant his appeal,
Yes.
deny our request for a suspension of his unarmed license.
I need a second. So I don't find a second, so I guess we'll go back to your motion.
Okay. I move that we suspend him until the end of his probation.
Second.
Successful completion of his probation. In some instances, courts will grant them early if somebody has made certain progress, or there may be a hearing or any kind of delays. So that would be the clearest way to present it.
That's exactly what I meant.
Second.
All right, you've heard the motion, ready for the question. All in favor by a sign of aye?
Aye.
All opposed by no? No. Ayes have it.
The second matter, our recommendation is to, or our request is to uphold the denial of the unarmed license.
I move that we uphold the denial of the unarmed license.
Second.
All in favor by a sign of aye?
Aye.
All opposed by no? Ayes have it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Office of Community Complaints, Director Merrill Bennigan. Thank you, sir. Public comments, I have two. The first one is Vera. I don't have a last name. And our clock is not here today, but we have 2 minutes for the speaker.
Behind you.
Website for it.
Right.
My name is Vera. I'm sure some of you remember me from last time. October 22nd, I was put in handcuffs and brutalized by KCPD Officer James Brownsburg, badge number 5946, while going on a walk. Like I said, some of you may remember me. Some of you may be thinking, Vera, that officer's name sounds a little bit different. That's a different name than you gave me before. While I had no intention of coming back here, I decided to come back because Officer James Brownsburger gave me a wrong name. He didn't give me his correct name after he attacked me that night. I would like all of you to take a second and think. If he didn't do anything wrong, why would he have given me the wrong name? Does that sound like the actions of an innocent man to you? Because I don't think so. Mayor, going back to something that you said earlier, you said that you're already in a penny pinching state for the rest of the year. Do you think continuously getting sued by communities for consistently experiencing these excessive force cases, do you think that's going to help? I don't. I'm tired of looking at the news and seeing social media and seeing KCPD officers get away with another brutalized person. I am sick of seeing it. In this case, I walked away with bruises and trauma. In a lot of cases, people in our communities, they don't survive encounters with KCPD. They don't survive their walks. They don't survive going to the grocery store. They don't survive going home after a long day of work. Officer James Brownsburger is a terrorist with a gun and a badge. And we know from hundreds of cases of Black and brown people getting brutalized by KCPD that he is not the only one. I just want to know what's being done about it. I want to know what's being done about it. Because I was going on a walk. They were looking for men, Mayor. They were looking for men. I was going on a walk and I was attacked. I wasn't given a sorry. I wasn't given a, I made a simple mistake. I wasn't given anything. I was laughed at. I was laughed at for crying. I was on the floor crying for 6+ minutes. I was put in handcuffs. I walked away from that with bruises on my arms, bruises on my legs. Hell. I was hearing a lot about paying officers more because we're understaffed, I think you said. There's about 24 cops sitting on that block laughing like it was a kickback. They arrested those men that did whatever heinous crime they did. Okay, fine, cool. They were looking for men. Why was I attacked? As a woman, why was I attacked? That's an answer I want to know, honestly. I want to know that answer. I want to know why I was attacked. I want to know why I wasn't given a sorry. I want to know why they sat there and laughed at me like I was being unreasonable for sobbing on the floor. That was in front of my apartment. That was in my safe space. I haven't been home since. That was 3 fucking weeks ago. I haven't been home since. Because I can still see the outline of my body on the grass. I don't get it. I do not get it. You also said no one can be mad about radios, right? I can be mad about radios. Because to me, those radios worked perfectly fine when I was labeled a suspect. I was 2 blocks away from my apartment. The pain that I have experienced, that shit's never gonna go away. Let me tell you, I wasn't very fond of y'all before. I wasn't very fond, I'm not gonna lie. But experiencing that firsthand, experiencing that trauma, he put me in handcuffs. I've never been put in handcuffs. I've never been arrested. I've never been charged of a crime other than a speeding ticket, I'll admit that. I was put in handcuffs. That's something I'll never get over. And I want something to be done about James L. Brownsberger. And I want to know why he gave me a fake name. And I want to know if that's acceptable to all y'all.
Severe, have you made a complaint to the Office of Community Complaints?
I have, but honestly, that's not enough because this man is still walking around. He's still walking around with a badge and a gun. He's still walking around traumatizing our communities. It's simply not enough. It's not enough.
Thank you. I am sure I will check with,
I hope you do.
thank you. Doug Schaefer?
I'm Doug Schaefer, Kansas City taxpayer, underrepresented on this, for about 20% of the city's budget. We had an election this last week, you may know. The most important item on it, if I could only have voted for one thing, it would have been Amendment 4. How we got to Amendment 4, brief history. In a perverse twist on the idea of the Boston Tea Party, earlier this year, the Kansas City government said, tell you what, British state overseers, take more money, take more of our taxes. We just want to tell you how to use that portion. People in the state oversight said, state legislators said, oh my gosh, you want to tell us how to spend your money? We can't have that. We're gonna make it worse. We want to make you pay 25% of your budget. So they passed a law. The governor signed it, and they knew it was unconstitutional. So we have Amendment 4 to make an exception to the state constitution so we can tell Kansas City how to spend its money. And then the Secretary of State is obligated to put on the ballot a brief description and whether it has a budgetary impact. And so the Secretary of State said he intentionally obfuscated the language so nobody that didn't already know would not have any idea this was about Kansas City. The word Kansas City was not in the budget summary, it was not in the ballot summary, and claimed that it had no fiscal impact. The way we know that is a lie is because if it had no fiscal impact, it would have had no reason to be on the ballot. There would be no reason for Amendment 4 to even have to be considered if the ballot language is true. That's called ballot fraud. Now, my recommendation to the board, as a matter of conscience, to all unelected members of the board, in violation of American principles that go back before the Boston Tea Party, taxation without representation, all this undemocratic stuff, in solidarity with the other people of Kansas City, I urge all of you unelected members of this board to resign en masse in protest for this violation of our democratic process.
General discussion, Chief Maben.
Check, I guess we're still morning, barely. But before I begin, I want to take a moment to recognize two of our deputy chiefs who will retire soon. Now, we already mentioned Deputy Chief Mike Hicks of the Administration Bureau. Mike began his career with the department in September of 1994, serving Kansas City for 28 years. He's held many assignments to include patrol, sex crimes unit, homicide unit, juvenile unit, and information services division. Also want to recognize Deputy Chief Karen True of the Patrol Bureau. She began her career in January of 1994 and served Kansas City for nearly 29 years. Deputy Chief True has held many assignments also to include patrol, internal audit unit, special projects, and violent crimes enforcement. Deputy Chief True also commanded the Executive Services Bureau before transferring to lead the Patrol Bureau. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today, but we wish her the best as she starts a new chapter in her life. We're thankful for both of their service and dedication to the citizens of Kansas City and to the police department. Now, as we heard earlier, we currently have over 1,100 officers in this police department. These 1,100 officers serve more than 500,000 residents, plus businesses and their employees, and visitors to the city. That carries much responsibility, but these officers have dedicated themselves to making Kansas City better. They do it every day, and 99% of the time, they do it without fanfare or recognition. But today, I'd like to show you the other 1%. 12 days ago, Officer Richard Duchesne and Officer Charles Owen responded to a medical call for a 1-month-old baby girl who wasn't breathing. These officers were the first to arrive on scene, and you're about to see the body-worn camera footage of what happened. Please pay attention to the urgency, the calmness, and the compassion that they showed.
25 more 10-3.
10-23, 11-28.
Yes, sir.
I could feel her. Turn her up and hit the back. Turn her down. Come on, sweetie. Come on. I can hear her. A little harder. Come on. There she goes. Come on. Come on. There you go. Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's see. Hold her up. Let's see. I could. She's breathing now. She is breathing. Hold her over. Let's see if there's an obstruction in her mouth. Come on.
6911.
Let me see. Come on. Open that mouth. Come on. Come on. Turn her over to her side a little bit. Come on. There you go. There we go. There you go.
Later that day, Officer Duchesne and Officer Owen played a visit to the baby in the hospital. And I'm happy to share that the baby is now better and back at home with her family. This incident has been featured on local news affiliates in nearly every single state, on most major national networks, and several national morning shows. It's also even been covered internationally. This was an amazing display of policing, but I can tell you that this professionalism and willingness to serve is not rare at KCPD. These officers would say that they were just doing their job, and that's true, but it takes a special person to do their job, and we're proudly that we have 1,100 officers like that. So we have a tradition on the police department where the chief will present a member with a chief's coin to recognize that member for outstanding performance. Officers Duchesne and Owen are here today, and I invite them to come down to the front so we can all recognize them, and I can present each of them with a chief's coin for a job well done.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Approval of open session minutes, October 25th, 2022.
I move approval.
Second.
Moving and second, all in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it. David Kenner?
Yes, I wanted to, in honor of Veterans Day, I wanted to thank all of the members of the department who have either served in the armed forces in the past or currently serve in the reserves of the National Guard. I want to thank you for your service. Also, I want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving next week.
This year is flying by.
Yes.
Mayor Lucas?
I actually took notes of what I was going to say, but I lost them, so you're all spared. A few things I want to note. I see Deputy Chief True is not here. I hope she's watching or sees this video later. I have appreciated working with her for some time when she was working with budget over at City Hall. I believe I was on the city council and perhaps was a new mayor then. It was always worthwhile. But one of my favorite moments with her, I was doing a patrol division road show. And some of those meetings could be tense at times for whatever reason. Deputy Chief True, I remember at East Patrol, stepped up, kept us in a good direction, and I think always wanted to make sure that she was sharing and that we were sharing good information, so we'll miss her. One other group I want to thank are our acting deputy chiefs. Some of you have presented a number of times to us, some not as many times. You have done wonderful work. I have no idea how long you'll keep doing this wonderful work, but I wanted to make sure I recognize all that you have done, including that our acting chief, who I think has responded well to a number of different things. We had extensive discussion on budget, and I think that makes sense. One of my interests, and it's always been, does relate to salaries. I think when we talk about 911 call operators, even officers, where we set our pay, and granted, I know it's a service, call for service that people take, but I think that's vital for us. I continue to encourage us in this budget year, as some have requested, myself, I think the Fraternal Order of Police and others, to see what we can do, if there is something we can do within this year to try to make sure our officers and civilian staff can find extra pay. that does make a difference for people. I don't know if it's possible or impossible, but I know Acting Deputy Chief, you're doing all that you can, and everybody who works with you to make sure we get to that point. And so I thank you for that. And then just a few other points, and I'll stop. A lot of things happen each day, and ma'am, I hear your comments and I hear others, but this is a big city, a large department, and I think by and large, our officers go out each day to do the best they can for the people of Kansas City. There are certainly mistakes and any number of issues, and we try to take those to account. But there are a lot of good people here, and I think we saw in that last story just that very thing. I had a chance to talk to some folks in the traffic unit about motorcycles recently. I won't pick that fight, although I hear people like BMWs rather than Harleys, but I promised them during the mayor's Christmas tree discussion I would bring it up. And so with all that, I'll say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I know there'll be a lot of fights ahead, and us politicians get them all the time, but I appreciate you all keep coming here and doing the work. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Kramer?
Well, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving's a time to be grateful. And I'd like to say I'm really grateful to be here, to be serving as a board member. Appreciate everything everybody does in this department. And Deputy Chief Hicks, we're going to miss you, and we're going to miss True. So good luck to you, and thank you all for what you do.
Commissioner Wagner?
I'd also like to say I certainly enjoyed working with Deputy Chief Hicks. You've been a very interesting person to work with, and also Deputy Chief True. So that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Dean?
I thank Deputy Chief Hicks, and I've got all kinds of papers that you sent me recently since my meeting with city council members. So I was hoping that you would still be here. I may call on you if I have to go to one of those meetings, but I have all the paper just in case. But thank you for your work and your sense of humor. I appreciate both.
Thank you. We've had an interesting meeting. It's amazing how this year has flown by. This board is working untiringly, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of pulling things together. And so I appreciate all of the board members, the mayor, chief, standing in to keep this department together. Sorry to see you go, Deputy Chief Hicks and Deputy Chief True. But hopefully one day I'll be able to join you in retirement. But we're looking forward to the budget talks and getting all of this worked out. It's a lot of work, but we thank all of the men and women in blue who work hard. We don't get everything right every time, but we will at least try to have an answer and even an apology sometime is due. So thank you, and have a great Thanksgiving. Need a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn this public meeting and go into closed session.
Second. Lucas,
Albert,
aye.
Wagner, aye.
Kramer, aye.
Dean, aye.
Thank you.